Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle's off tonight. The suspects in the horrible and heartbreaking death of a 5-year-old Montana boy make an appearance in court. And tonight we've learned new information about their history here in Yellowstone County. And Stephanie Byington pleaded not guilty to multiple charges in the death of their son, Antonio Renova, including deliberate homicide, child endangerment, and assault on a minor yesterday in Great Falls. Their acquaintance, Rasco Birdtail, also pleaded not guilty to deliberate homicide and tampering with evidence. Now, the young victim had just been returned to his parents' custody earlier this year from foster care. MTN is also learning more about the violent criminal past of the parents of 5-year-old Antonio Renova, including charges of aggravated assault and endangering the welfare of a child that occurred in Yellowstone County in the last decade. Charging documents obtained from back in 2009 say Billings officers responded to a report of an assault where Emilio Renova was accused of punching his pregnant girlfriend, Stephanie Byington. In 2012, Byington was arrested herself and initially charged with kidnapping for leaving in a vehicle with children that may have been her relatives and endangering those children by being in a hotel room where meth was present. She was also charged with stealing money. Later that year, the kidnapping charge was dropped. Well, a Facebook post made on the Laurel Emergency Medical Services page last night caused some concern for some residents in the community. Laurel Volunteer Ambulance Director Riley Hutchins made the post criticizing the mayor's decision to not hire on 5 full-time EMTs and announced his resignation. Laurel Mayor Tom Nelson says he only placed the decision on hold and the city will now hire 5 full-time EMTs. Q2's Mitch Leahy joins us now with more from the Laurel Mayor. Mitch?
Well, Russ, the Laurel Mayor Tom Nelson told me today that the city needs more ambulance personnel to respond to the growing number of calls in the community. Nelson said that the 5 new EMTs will work alongside the current volunteer ambulance service, helping pick up calls during the nighttime and early morning hours. Those are the kind of calls that would take the volunteers a longer time to get to. Laurel Ambulance Director Riley Hutchins updated his post today, saying the new EMTs will start work in January 2020. Last night, Hutchins announced his resignation as the ambulance service director, saying, quote, "I can no longer serve as EMS director under this administration. The new EMTs will be paid for by the city under a contract with American Medical Response, the same ambulance service that operates in Billings."
I just put that on hold yesterday because I wanted to get some more answers to questions that I hadn't gotten answered yet in regards to some of the plans for that, and we've identified that need to utilize full-time employees, especially and that again is to support and back up the volunteers and utilize them, especially those times of day when it's just really difficult to get the volunteers over to the station.
And the mayor added that Laurel has no social media policy governing the content that its departments can post. We've reached out to Hutchins for comment, but have not heard back at this time. Russ?
All right, thank you, Mitch. Well, President Trump signed an executive order today establishing a nationwide missing murdered Indigenous persons task force. Attorney General William Barr announced the president's intentions to do so while visiting Montana last week. That initiative would invest $1.5 million to hire specialized coordinators in 11 U.S. attorneys' offices across the U.S. The coordinators would be responsible for developing protocols for law enforcement response to missing persons cases.
One study showed that Native American women in certain tribal communities are 10 times more likely to be murdered than the average American. The victims and their families deserve action, and this should have happened many years ago.
All right, turning to weather now. Bob's keeping a close eye on a system that could blow a lot of snow our way a little later this week.
I'm afraid so. Of course, if you have travel plans, and who doesn't, especially if you're taking airplanes, let me show you what we're having. We do have some issues here. The good news here is that Denver is at least improving, but yesterday and this morning, they had canceled hundreds of flights because of all the heavy snow. Now today, this is what we have left for you. Salt Lake City, that connection, they have 8 to 12 inches of snow there. If your travel plans take you to Minneapolis, like in Northwest, 8 to 12 inches of snow in that area, so they're still going to have some issues. So the storm that hit Denver last night and this morning, that whole thing is moving in towards Minneapolis. And then storm number 2 is starting to make its way in towards Oregon. Washington, and the Great Basin area, and also California. So what does that mean for us? Well, here's the way things are shaping up today at 5:30. Really not too bad, as you'll see, but then watch what happens. By the time Thursday night gets here, maybe 1 to 2 inches for snow for Billings, a little more in the western part of the state. But then on Friday night into Saturday, bam, 10 to 14 inches of snow according to the GFS model, as much as 20 inches up at Jordan and places like Miles City. This is going to be, instead of a Black Friday, it could be a very white Friday because of all the snow across the region. We'll have more in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob. Well, how are you and your friends or family traveling this year? I doubt it's by sleigh. In this week's Weatherwise, MTN's Curtis Grevenitz shows us how different modes of transportation determines how much carbon emission travelers create over the holiday.
Before the turkey is even out of the oven, we're already packing on the pounds. Pounds of carbon, that is. According to AAA, 49.3 million Americans will drive for Thanksgiving. 4.5 million will fly, and another 1.5 million will take a train or a bus. Now here's something to chew on. Transportation accounts for 28% of Americans' overall greenhouse gas emissions. Driving by sheer volume is the most carbon-intensive way to travel, but by packing up the family and Aunt Edna, it significantly cuts the carbon footprint. While a single-passenger car will create 0.02 pounds of carbon dioxide per mile, a family of 4 will be a fourth of that number at just 0.2 pounds per passenger mile, which is actually better than flying. Air travelers create about 0.5 pounds of CO2 per passenger mile. Train travelers will create 0.4 pounds per passenger mile, and those taking a bus will yield the least at 0.24 pounds per passenger mile. And just to put things into perspective, the carbon footprint of a 16-pound turkey creates a total of 34.2 pounds of CO2. The biggest carbon impact is caused by people, not food, traveling extensive distances. This is not to make you feel guilty like having that third helping, but to recognize the impact we have on our environment. And now you're a little more weather-wise.
Well, another organization is adding to the pot in order to find whomever is responsible for poaching 4 mule deer bucks back in October. The Colstrip Sportsman's Club is offering up another $700, bringing the reward to $1,700 now. The deer were found on private property near the Sarpy Creek Mine in Bighorn County. FWP believes 2 people removed the head from one deer and then left all 4 to waste. Anyone with information is asked to contact FWP. Well, MTN Investigates is tracking the money surrounding a state-run program that doles out millions of dollars every year. And it's all centered around hunting season and the concern for hunter access. MTN investigative reporter Andrea Lutz has a preview of her story tonight, Hunting for Bucks.
We are in the thick of hunting season, and every single day dozens of hunters are passing through onto private property, and they're doing so through one of these, a block management site. Landowners are actually getting paid to let hunters through, and we're learning it's a pretty decent amount.
The Montana legislature started block management back in 1985 to open up land to hunters through private property. In the years that followed, millions of dollars has been paid to Montana landowners to do so.
Because you might only have a few acres, but you're allowing public access through your property to get to a huge chunk of public ground.
Landowners put up a sign-in box, even making their own rules.
Well, we get a pretty good check from our block management.
But the question is, who is footing the bill for all of this?
We're tracking the money and asking officials with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks where that $6 million a year program is coming from, how it's paid for, and who can join. Watch my MTN investigation, Hunting for Bucks, tonight at 10. Back to you.
Hope you'll join us for that. And Andrea's story is up right now on our website. Again, her MTN investigation, Hunting for Bucks, airs tonight at 10. Well, 2 of the 3 Republican candidates for Montana governor will have their first public debate tonight in Helena. Attorney General Tim Fox and State Senator Al Olszewski of Kalispell will square off on the Carroll College campus. They'll be fielding questions primarily about jobs and the economy prepared by Carroll College students. The 3rd GOP candidate for governor, Congressman Greg Gianforte, is unable to make the debate because of prior family commitments. 4 Democrats are also running for governor, which is an open seat because incumbent Governor Steve Bullock is barred by term limits from running again. And we'll have full coverage of the debate in tonight's 10 o'clock news. Well, there's more news from across our state tonight. The holiday season can be a gold mine for thieves. We've got some advice on how to make sure what you buy not only makes it to your doorstep, but stays there. Join me for that and much more on the MTN Statewide News. That's coming up at 9 on the CW. But first, still to come on tonight's 5:30 News. He never smoked, but this Montana man is now battling stage 3 lung cancer. We'll hear his story. And later in sports, meet the catalyst behind Miles City's run to another state football title.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.